Drums and Hoses. There once was a large 55-gallon drum named Pickle. Now, of course, Pickle didn't start out as a burly 55-gallon drum. No siree. He began as a little bucket, just like everybody else. Like a small sand pail you'd play with at the beach. Except there was no beach for Pickle. He was put out into a large dirt field by somebody called Mr. Good. Mr. Good taught Pickle at a young age that he was made for a very particular purpose. But the purpose was so simple that he didn't really understand why it was important. Still, Mr. Good told him that it was the most important job in the dirt field. His job was to lay down. See, I told you it wasn't very difficult. Yep, that was his whole job. Just to lay down at least once a day. Okay, thought Pickle, I guess I can do that. Besides, the cool grass did feel good. Life for the little pail was pretty ordinary, as he grew a little each day and practiced his laying down. Then came the day when Mr. Good brought what looked like a long green snake with him. He looked at Pickle and said, "I think you're ready." And before Pickle could ask, "Ready for what?" the green snake started pouring something cool and clear into Pickle, till he was filled right up. The feeling was something he'd never felt before. It was so refreshing. All of his senses seemed to come alive. What in the world was this? Mr. Good laughed as he saw Pickle almost dance with delight. "This is called water," he explained, "and it brings life to everything it touches." "This is awesome!" the getting bigger every day bucket boomed. "I never felt this good." And that continued all afternoon until he, kind of out of habit by now, laid down. All the water went gushing into the garden. "Wait!" cried Pickle as was that even supposed to happen? Well, what was done, and he then fell into a fairly confused night's sleep. In the morning, Pickle woke up as usual, but he was so thirsty he could hardly stand it. He looked and looked for Mr. Good, but it wasn't till late afternoon he showed up with the green snake, called a hose, Pickle had learned. At last, thought Pickle, and sure enough, the hose brought another filling of wonderful water. Tonight, though, Pickle had learned his lesson. Being full felt so good, he didn't want to wake up empty again. After all, what if Mr. Good didn't show up at all the next day? He'd have to go completely without any water. So with great resolve, he decided to not lay down. He stood straight up all night, and sure enough, he woke up full. Although it didn't feel quite as cool and refreshing as it did yesterday, it was still wet. Now, as it happens, Mr. Good did show up again the next day, and he noticed that Pickle was still full. "Didn't you lay down last night?" he asked. "No, I wanted to stay full because it felt so good," answered the bucket-turned-barrel. "Well, I understand," said Mr. Good, "but remember your particular purpose." And with that, he left. He didn't fill Pickle because there wasn't any room for more. This went on for several days. Each night, Pickle refused to lay down and give up the filling that had made him so happy. And every day he got up more and more grumpy. He didn't look for Mr. Good anymore. He actually didn't like it when the kind man showed up because he was going to get the same old speech. And then Mr. Good just stopped coming around. But one miserable morning, Pickle woke up and was more thirsty than he'd ever been when he was empty. "How can that be?" he wondered. "I'm still full, but I can't feel anything good anymore." He missed Mr. Good so much that he just started crying and pleading for Mr. Good to just show up. After what seemed like a month, but was probably closer to a couple of hours, Mr. Good did show up. He comforted the now big burly barrel and tried to calm him down from his misery. "Why don't you like me any more?" wailed Pickle. "You never come by, you never fill me any more," he complained. "I feel horrible and you don't even care." Mr. Good looked at him and said, "Every time I tried to fill you, there wasn't any room for more. So I just stopped coming around until you made room for more of my water." Mr. Good calmly explained, "Look at the field around you," he pointed out to Pickle. It was brown and dry. "You forgot your particular purpose," he went on, "and the whole field that needed that water has been dry and hurting for a long time." "But I didn't know if you'd come back and fill me, so I thought I'd better keep as much as I could," Pickle kind of whimpered. "You can trust me," Mr. Good reminded him. "I wanted to get this water to the field, and I wanted to use you to do it. You can trust that I won't let the field down, and I won't let you down. And that's why I gave you this particular purpose in the first place." As tears cleared and he calmed down, things began to make sense to Pickle. The water never was meant for him. It was for the field. Mr. Good used him to pour it because he knew how happy that would make the big barrel. Now that he understood his particular purpose, he asked sheepishly, "What if I lay down earlier in the day? Could you use me twice?" And with that, Mr. Good laughed and said, "I'll come by to refill you whenever I see you empty." And with that, the big burly barrel, who now wanted to be called a drum because he was starting his purpose all over, spent most of his day laying down and spilling out water, looking forward to being filled right up again. And he realized that even though he didn't get to keep any of the water poured in him, he was pretty well always full.